And now I would like to introduce our excellent lunch fireside chat. This discussion of artificial intelligence in shaping the future of education and the workforce. Executive Director of AI Academy and Professor at North Carolina State. Gabriela Lopez, Director of Research and Practice Measures from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And Tyler Sherman, a science teacher at Cambridge Virtual Academy and Magnolia High School in Anaheim. They will delve in, give them a round of applause. They will delve into the dynamic intersection of AI and career preparedness for K-12 students. Moderated by Anaheim Union Superintendent Michael Matsuda, this session is a deep dive into how we can equip the next generation with the skills to thrive in an AI-driven world. And now, Superintendent Matsuda.
Thanks, Brian. You know, been spending lunch trying to get a read on the audience, sort of the buzz out there and the energy. I don't know, I can't say how proud I am of our community in the district and all of you guys taking the time to come out and kind of a back and forth. So the questions are not necessarily going to be answered by each person, but I wanted to give you a little context too, because I'm going to have them share about what they do. This panel is on career preparedness. What does AI mean as a career, and you know, how is this transforming? I think the morning speakers sort of teed it off really well, challenging us to, this is an opportunity to think about the intention of schools. What is the purpose of school in this sort of upside down world that students are entering? And what are we using AI to actually measure? Because I think those are really important questions to think about as we prepare young people for the world of work. And so I'm really happy to be sort of interviewing our guests. So we have a classroom teacher. We have a professor that has an amazing program that is already forcing us to rethink schools. It's not just in K-12. We're talking about, you know, several entry points, and we're going to hear more about that. And then we have another, Gabby is someone who is sort of the policy area and looks at things from 30,000 feet. So think about that as we do this progression. And again, it's not going to be like everybody has to answer the question. So it's more of a discussion. So we're going to start off with just a couple minutes of what, from a teaching perspective, Tyler, what does career preparedness mean in this new AI world?
Yeah, so really quick, I'm also a newly doctor, so Dr. Sherman. That's weird. And yeah, I am a classroom teacher. I teach at Magnolia High School, and I teach at our virtual academy. And then I always say I also have the greatest job too. I get to work very closely with our learning management system, eCadence, where we are really integrating AI at every level. I was thinking about all the CEOs and superintendents and all these impressive titles, so how could I inflate my resume a little bit? So I'm also the commissioner of my fantasy football league. Yeah, I got dared to say that, so we're good. But yeah, I mean, I think with careers, and we had wonderful some speakers yesterday. With AI, I think it's the first time in, I mean, many years, 100 years, that there's something that can disrupt the way that our classroom looks and what education looks like. So there's often with jobs is we don't know, you know, what jobs are coming in, you know, 2, 3, 10 years from now. And I feel like that's what's exciting about this type of work. But what stays true into the heart of AUHSD and our teacher through the vision of Superintendent Matsuda is skills are always going to be there, right? So even though there's uncertainty with AI and what it means, teaching students how to critically think, how to not just trust it because it's there. Like, they still need to fact check it just like they would if they searched for a website on a website. So teaching those skills, and then ultimately with jobs, and we always say, especially with eCadence, about the power of getting data and finding those insights at a street level, and understanding what our students want, understanding what companies want, and then building jobs off of there.
Thank you. Carla Johnson, Executive Director of the AI Academy and Professor at North Carolina State.
So I think maybe I can add a slightly different perspective to that. I've been involved in this thing called STEM for over 20 years now, and was probably one of the pioneers of that. And I can remember meeting in Ohio with state legislatures there, and was announced as a stem cell person. So we've come a long way in 20 years. And by virtue of that work, I've really, moved into looking at AI and building out inclusive pathways for individuals to upskill and also enter AI careers in the last 4 years. 17,000 jobs, and I know it's probably more than that, but the last search on LinkedIn, 17,000 jobs for everything from entry level to, more highly skilled professionals in AI. And it's so important now to be thinking about how we actually develop future talent to do that in an educational system where science even isn't taught in a lot of schools, right? So we have a lot of challenges there. With the AI Academy, we've been able to build a program that engages, I guess we've had almost 2,000 people now in the last 4 years, from GED to PhD, who have entered the program and are now out and prepared to move into careers in the workforce. And that's been enabled with partnerships with over 100 industries. Everything from healthcare to financial to entertainment, and also, the IT companies. Everyone needs AI talent now, and so we need to really be thinking about how we now back that into K-12 schools. And so NC State has partnered with NCEP, I know Alex is here, AI EDU, to build something called the National Inclusive AI Alliance. And so that's something that we're really thinking about. How do we now take what we've learned from a workforce development program for individuals across the United States and back that into high school, because it's so needed.
Thank you. And we have Gabby Lopez, Director of Research and Practice Measures from the Zuckerberg Institute.
Yes, so first of all, thank you for having us here, and we're excited to be in partnership with all of you here. At the ZZI, as we very lovingly call it, we really are thinking about how to take technology, build with educators, and to address the most pressing needs that educators have in the education space. And that's all in service of unlocking unlimited student potential. And so all of the work and the way in which we see the world is really about how do we take what we know in learning science, what we know technology can do and should do, and what educators need in order to bring that reality to life. And when we think of AI, we think of it needs to address specific needs and answer specific questions that we have in service of education and in service of a system that was designed for a very different purpose many, many years ago when the world was a different place. And now we are at the cutting edge of a world that we don't know. We can't imagine what's going to happen 10, 20 years ago, what the workforce will look like. But the fundamental skills that we need to have in order to engage in that future don't change. And you named them, Tyler. So excited to have this conversation, Mike.
So, we've had a lot of, well, actually not that much time to really reflect on so much information that was presented this morning. My head's kind of still spinning. But we had an interesting conversation at our table, Gabby, about sort of the purpose of education. Where are we going with this? You want to maybe comment on your reflections from this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. obviously, we are whole child people. At ZZI, that has been the history of our existence. We've worked on what it means to go to school and have your full essence of being reflected in the curriculum, in the choices that, the agency that young people have, how educators engage and are in relationship with young people, and how, what struck me about this morning is we had a very nice sort of learning progression for those of us who like scaffolding. It was quite nicely done, I will say. In this moment in time, what do we need young people to walk away with once they leave our doors in order to be critical consumers of the things that they see in the world, the information they see in the world? How do we support them to develop visions of themselves and each other in deeply human ways? The technology is a tool. Humanity is something we engender and we see in one another. And that at the end of the day, we have to design tools that help us see each other as dignified human beings worthy of respect, sense of belonging, connection, all of the things that make us uniquely human that will never really be a part of technology and shouldn't be.
Yeah. I would like to chime in a little bit about, like, it's such a fascinating question, right? What the purpose of education is, and I think the answer to that, my opinion is the purpose of education is different for every student. And different for every person. And I think as a classroom teacher, what we always try to do is differentiate our instruction for students. And on a broader scale, okay, we have to differentiate our education for students. But it's always been a really, we all are educators in the room, that is really hard and extremely time consuming. And I think where AI is changing things is we are able to create a way more personalized education, way more personalized assignments in the classroom. We know if we can identify students' strengths, interests, wherever, whatever they want to do, colleges, we can get a sense of that sense of belonging and all those things that you mentioned that are so important. But AI is I feel like that catalyst right now that is going to allow us to differentiate what education means for every student, not just this one size fits all.
That's right.
So, Carla, it sounds like you're already on the pathway to reinvent education. When you say that it's not your program, the AI Academy is not just for K-12 students. You talk about meeting, it's open to adults and meeting them where they are. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's interesting. I think, let me do a prelude to that first. I think about, and this is going to be fun, show of hands, how many people remember using an Encyclopedia Britannica to do their work in school? Yes, I am not the only old person in the room. And then we had to shift to the 21st century, and oh, wait a minute, we have this computer. We can look up all the information we ever need. We don't have to memorize that periodic table anymore. And then now we have AI that can write our papers for us. So, some of the challenges, I'm also wear the hat of a university professor. Now we're seeing people in our courses writing beautiful papers, AI enabled, and then they have an oral exam and they can't stand up and explain any of it. So there's a disconnect there. There is something that we need to work on. But for what we've been able to do with the AI Academy, and we have people date of birth before 1960 in our program. We have people that are fresh out of high school. There's so much momentum around interest in AI and people wanting to just get in the game or try to reinvent themselves. And so what we've been able to do with our program is to really make multiple on-ramps so that they're able to do. The way we do it, we have a flipped classroom model, so they have interactive seminars from computer science and AI professional or experts at the university that they will view before they come to the main part of our program, which is live interactive workshops, 4 hours a week, so it's pretty intensive. But they are engaging with data. They're engaging in discourse. They're talking about things. They're really discussing what are the ethical considerations that we have to really attend to, and there are a lot of them. But the most important thing is accessibility. And so we have, I think 30% of the people in our program have never programmed, probably have never taken a computer science course. Now, of course, their pathway is a bit longer, but you know, what we're thinking about now is that even enough? You know, thinking about how we make this available to students in high school and then even before is something really important. So there will be some modifications we need to do to make it accessible. But the thing that I really think about AI that is so beautiful is that AI can make education more accessible and build more equity, because to your point, teachers in the classroom, there's only so much time, and 45 minutes goes by so darn fast, and wait a minute, you had your hand up, but we'll have to get to that tomorrow, and I don't really know if you understood what we talked about. AI can enable all that stuff so that teachers are able to really be able to do more of the differentiation and things like that. So those are all things that we're considering and doing quite a bit of research on now.
So our district prides itself in being progressive and transformative, yet when we look at our internal data, we have about a 70% usage of our learning platform, which I understand is higher than most districts. Tyler, you know, you were very optimistic about these tools and how it can make teaching more efficient. How do we train teachers, or how do we frame this, these exciting things in ways that we can get the other 30%?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? And I think, to me, again, everything goes back to AI just being so new. And people, and so many of our teachers have been teaching, you know, since UHSD is such a great district. It's, you know, they're 10, 15, 20, 30 years into the profession, and it's hard to change. We've already talked about teaching is a hard profession, so getting that change takes time. However, with AI, I think it's just about exposure. It's about meeting them, just like our students, where they're at, and showing them how it can save time, how it can get them to know their students better. I think when we're talking about jobs, I think we're in a teaching crisis right now where so many teachers are leaving the profession because it's so hard. So if we can use AI to actually get to the essence of why teachers want to teach, like for me, I didn't get into teaching because I love biology. I teach biology, I like it, but I got into teaching because I loved the connection with kids. So with eCadence, our LMS, I have so much time because of these little features of not having to deal with the nuances, where I can actually spend more time with my students. So it's making me kind of revitalize that fire, that passion for teaching again. So if we find those teachers amongst all teachers, but our district, of what is it that you value of teaching, and I promise you, especially with eCadence and AI, there's a way that it can work for you, and it's just finding that.
Anybody else want to comment on how do we scale internally and externally? You know, all of you guys going back to your school sites, how do you share this and how do you scale it? How do you frame AI as an expectation in young people's careers?
I think that it goes really, if you think about inquiry-based science, so making that shift from teaching science from read the chapter, do the questions at the end, and maybe don't look up the answers, which is a lot of the things that we didn't want science teachers to do. There are people called early adopters, Michael, and I think that that's really where it starts. A lot of the work that we are moving into now is providing training for computer science teachers so that they become AI experts. And then you have a resource in the building that other teachers can come to and learn more about how to use the AI tools in their classroom. So that's one place to start. But professional development, just like trying to learn any kind of new curricula or any new kind of teaching strategy, is so important, and there's so much research about that. Laura Desimone at the University of Delaware is probably one of the leading people that have done this type of research, and it requires 80 hours of professional development sustained at least across one school year while they're actually implementing whatever the innovation is to actually enable teachers to be able to begin change.
It's simple. You have to address a need that teachers need at the end of the day. It has to absolutely, it can't be something that's theoretical, it can't be something that's arbitrary. It is super simple. If you, and one of our panelists this morning mentioned this, if you address the thing that is going to leverage that 5 minutes for you to sit and check in with one of your students, you'll do it. We all will do it. Our human nature is to like take care of that thing we have to take care of, and then let's move on so that I can connect with you. And we haven't quite done that very well in ed tech.
What is the importance of just preparing students for a mindset of change? You know, you guys just went through your first round of workshops. I was in Alex Cotran's workshop for a little bit, and there's just so many tectonic shifts going on so rapidly, and that's, you know, and there's all kinds of political stuff going on, and there's all kinds of objectifying going on. How do we prepare kids for this world? And I think this is some of the work that June's work, Professor On is working on, but how do we prepare them with using AI tools for a mindset to deal with all these changes?
Students are easy. I think the students are easy. I mean, the students 9 times out of 10 know more about the technology than the teachers do. But I even think of Michael Fullen's work, which I believe he's here somewhere. You know, thinking about educational change, there are a lot of guides that we can point to be able to do that. Empowering students to lead this within classrooms, teachers should not be afraid.
Absolutely. There's, we've ignored for a long time, well, let me backtrack. We've acknowledged the importance of quote unquote 21st century skills. We have neglected to anchor in the ways in which young people learn and the ways in which we have now, science tells us that young people need experiential learning. They need to understand relevance. They need to have agency. All of those things are deeply important when you enter the workforce, when you enter college, when you are exploring your identity and purpose and all of those things. And we have fundamentally not structured our schools and experiences to design for that and also learn the content that we need to learn. Those things don't have to be separate. They have to be connected and married deeply in order for young people to have the skills to be successful in the future. We need to learn how to learn. We don't actually do that in schools. We don't help ourselves learn how to learn because things will be changing so fast and they change so quickly. We wouldn't have imagined a year ago that we would be having this conversation around AI in education. If we taught young people to learn how they learn, to support each other in that differentiation and that scaffolded learning and that interaction, then that is applicable to lots of different domains and different types of information.
I think that's a very important concept of because this panel is about career preparedness, right? Learning how to learn requires reflection and it requires planning experiences for kids where they can learn how to learn, where you can build in the reflection where there's transcendent learning taking place. Tyler, you want to comment on that, on how our district is approaching that?
Definitely, but just to go back a little bit further, learning to learn is one of the coolest phrases. That's stolen. But I think with AI, with all of the power of it, it can make it almost too big sometimes. So I think it's really important as you know, superintendents, as teachers, like we don't lose focus on what we value. right? And that is for us in AUHSD, that is, again, that skill building, the 5 C's. And the importance of Professor On's work with UCI and that reflection component for our students. So we are, as a district, we are saying that our North Star, if you will, is teaching to these 5 C's and not to the test, right? Which as a teacher has unleashed me, and I never feel this pressure of any kind of standardized anything, which is awesome. But that reflection component for our students does a couple things. One, I think there is a incredible skill of learning how to reflect that our students are naturally doing built into the system. But then two, because of Professor On and the work, is we are learning so much about where they are. And that information that he's producing for us is allowing me to be a better teacher and allowing that student to be a better learner because I know how to teach them. So that type of work, and again, not losing focus on the skills. I always say, like, content can be learned. It's those skills that take so much more time to develop.
Carla, I know we talked about this earlier, is sort of the ethics of, how do we integrate the ethics into our training for this next generation? I know you guys are doing a lot of work in that area as well.
Absolutely, and it's something that's so important in AI overall. So within the AI Academy, we have it embedded in all of our coursework. To give you a sense, it's 4 courses. They take 1 course at a time, 10 weeks each. So within a year, participants in that program walk away with a data scientist and AI associate credential, recognized registered apprenticeship credential. So a couple of examples, one of those courses is data mining. And in that course, we purposefully embed data sets that have implicit bias within them. Compass is one of the data sets. And so they use that, they manipulate that, they learn about it, they learn how to think about their own internal personal biases. And then we build upon that in the final course in machine learning. And in that course, there are specific bias awareness activities that they do. And in those activities, they really learn how to be more cognizant about their own implicit biases and then think about how that actually will influence their interpretation of findings of the data, their conclusions, and then also their decision-making processes. So that's something that we really focus on, helping them to be more self-aware of their own, but then also to be able to identify and spot that within existing data that they may be working with.
Gabby, would you like to comment on that or take it in a different
I think I'm fangirling over here. Like, oh my God, that's so cool, I want to do that. No, I think I'm...
Well, if you think about it, if we intentionally build ethics into this training, and I think ethics training should be cross-curricular, that is a reflective practice that we're building in, right? I think all of this, we need to be intentional about building in reflection, and that's where that transcendent learning comes in. So.
I think you nailed it earlier with one of your opening statement today, is where teachers and students, there needs to be this aspirational thinking, but there also needs to be a little bit of skepticism with it, right? And also, I think it's so important because as we're learning about what AI is, we need to teach our students to fact check. Those skills aren't going away. Like just how we have, like for the longest time, we're teaching them to, vet their sources, get multiple perspectives. You still need those skills. Those skills, just because it's coming from Gemini or ChatGPT doesn't mean that it's real. In fact, like oftentimes it's not, right? So I don't know the right way of saying this, but you need to use your brain a little bit, and you need to teach that. But that needs to be built in to the way of thinking. Right now, I think we're in a weird time where it's what is popped out of ChatGPT, we are just accepting. Where the shift is, and the power of this room is, that shift needs to be 100% awesome, that popped out something cool, it saved me time, that I could steal that, but it is not just accepting it. It is then challenging it and then going to Google and researching it and doing more than just accepting what pops out.
Agreed. It is it's an interesting dynamic that we have right now, where we have always, quote unquote, always trained ourselves to check the source. And for whatever reason in this moment in time, we are neglecting that. And we're assuming that let's give ourselves a little credit and assume that we have been helping young people and students understand that they should be fact-checking all along the way. And so now it just means that that language that we use for fact-checking and evidence generation, data-driven decisions, we have all sorts of language that we've used for these processes. Assume that we have created the base level for that, build on that, so that we make it a normative thing that we all do. And we still have the right, we use this information to develop opinions and develop arguments and all of the wonderful things that we want to have young people engage in as we engage in a democratic society.
Can I add on to that a little bit? 21st Century Skills, the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, almost 2 decades ago came up with this framework of 21st century skills that every student should learn. Prior to Common Core, those were embedded into some of the state standards, so we had some early adopters. Ohio was one of those. But when I go in and speak to schools, and I've done a whole lot of work with schools to help them change, make a transformation into a STEM approach or a STEM school. And it really, at face value, that excludes a lot of people in the building. Oh, I'm not STEM, so it's not for me. The way that I really just break that right at the beginning is STEM's 90% 21st century skills, and they're like, what? And then they figure out that, the English teacher can benefit from that. Anyone else can benefit from that. But at no time more than ever, 21st century skills are so important. And one of the key parts of that framework are media literacy skills, right? How to be able to evaluate the data that you're pulling from the internet or getting from ChatGPT, And so I think that that's something, now that it's included in a lot more of our standards, Common Core and others, it's really important for the teacher to focus on that. So fun fact, Procter & Gamble, how many people here use a Procter & Gamble something in your house? Tide, all those things. A person who's applying for a job at Procter & Gamble, it's been this way for over 10 years. They're headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's how I know of this. Their interest, part of their application process is to gauge the individual's 21st century skills, regardless if they're going to be the front desk receptionist or the PhD chemist. So industry recognizes the importance of these skills and to be able to do these things. And so that's another caveat to really moving forward with an AI agenda, computer science agenda, whatever we want to call it, depending on what rollout we're looking at. Focusing on those 21st century skills is critical.
How do we measure those skills?
Oh, we have an assessment we've developed for that.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge, though, Mike. You're exactly right, because when I work with schools, they're like, that's great, but that's not on the report card. Like, we test science, we test this and that. And so we've developed a tool that can be used from kindergarten through, pretty much next to the grave, that measures a person's progress toward mastery in each of those skills across the lifetime. And so a lot of schools have moved to assessing that on top of the traditional content assessments in K-12. And so it's important. And the beauty of that is kindergarten, you're probably going to get a whole lot of, the lower level. But the thing I always talk about, and I've used it with NASA, I use it with a lot of people. In this room, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but a lot of people probably will not reach mastery on that assessment because they're naturally things that we're better at. So maybe some of us would be knocking critical thinking out of the park, but maybe death by PowerPoint is still a thing, so our communication skills could use some work. But it's important to be able to assess that, because how else are we going to help students move to the next level?
Well, that's exactly kind of where the 5 C's came from for that. The 21st century skills. So, we need to talk more about how we are attempting to measure those skills with some level of predictability, right?
I mean, I think it's easy. You just partner with CZI and UCI.
Yeah.
We think a lot about measurement. So full disclosure, measurement is my jam. So it is the thing that will make my eyes light up. We can have deep conversations about it. But disclaimer, I am not a measurement person by training. And I suspect that that's why I'm so curious about it, because I've always wanted to understand how we define what success is, how we define curiosity. I mean, come on, it looks different across every single one of us. And so we think a lot about what are the ways in which we can naturally capture this information in the way that you're interacting and setting up your classrooms, in the way that you're engaging with young people, in the way that young people are engaging with technology and with their educators. It's a natural these things happen naturally in classrooms when good teaching and learning are happening.
I think that's something that we're grappling with, because the satellite data that we're all used to, the test data, it's easy to quantify, right? Whereas once you start getting to that map and the street data is difficult to quantify and synthesize. But that's an area, I think, where AI could really amplify, to use Professor On's term. You want to comment on that, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it has to start at that street level, and we were really aware that in AUHSD we are a community school district, right? And part of that is finding our needs and assets of our community. So what we did with Carlos and his team, from the community schools, and then our partnership with eCadence, it's like data is, I think, probably the most valuable currency right now. Everyone is trying to collect your data. All of our apps right now are tracking where we are and what we're looking at and all those things, right? But the hardest part, especially anywhere, but especially within a school system, it's that data is great. Sending that survey out is wonderful, but without insights and actions, it's just a bunch of numbers and letters on a screen now. Do we still use paper? I don't. But within eCadence, now at our fingertips, I could put up a QR code right now. You could all type something in, and by the time I turn my head, it's already synthesized the top 5 themes. That's something that, to this point, has never existed. But imagine being able to collect data and get those insights so quickly to now we can take action. And I know this is a little long-winded, I'm sorry. We have, at Magnolia, we have Raising Student Voices. And a student came in and they survey all of our students about the needs or their concerns of the school, right? And so it was awesome. Our student leaders came in, they did the survey, and I asked the person who was running it, I was like, how are you synthesizing this? And he's like, well, I just tally when I say words. And I'm like, hey, I got a tool in eCadence, let's put it through. And then we found the need, I think this one, pretty standard cafeteria food. But what's funny is that was on a Monday, and on Tuesday I did a lesson on it. And then I had multiple students come up to me and be like, we always take these surveys, and then poof, they're gone. But this is the time where I felt like I said something, and then we did something about it. So they felt that purpose, they felt that agency, and what I just did mattered because we were learning about it the next day. And that's the power of being able to synthesize quickly.
So I would propose, as we close this out, we've been challenged with repurposing schools. And arguably, we've created schools based on satellite data, right? We've built schools and school systems, and that's been our purpose for the last 25 years. I would propose that now we have access to tremendous street data, voices from kids and parents and families, and that's where the AI tools can be used to inform us on reimagining what school can be. That's kind of what our table talk has been about. Gabby, do you want to comment on that?
Yes. Oh my God, so exciting. I know, I get excited about everything. Easily excitable. We are at a moment in time where we can engage one another in understanding the information that we have available to us. And that has not happened at scale before. I have an analogy that I was thinking about when we were having our table talk conversation, which is, I remember, so I'm old, I remember when I was training folks and working with folks around the idea of data-driven decision-making. And we would set up the room, be in a classroom or cafeteria, whatever the space was in the school, and there was tons of, flip chart papers with information and paper everywhere. And there is no way on God's green earth that we as human beings would be able to interpret all of that data and then make some decisions about what moves we were going to make the next day. There's no way. The brain cannot process that kind of information. We now have the ability to take all of this information, recognize patterns. That's the beauty of AI and the tool. Recognize patterns, understand the things that are happening, and then consume that and use what we're uniquely good at doing as humans, interpreting that to engage with another human being. That, at the end of the day, is the beauty of the moment we're in right now.
Well, I think that's a great way to end our discussion. I want to say this, that it's not, oftentimes people say, oh, the answers are in the room. I don't think they are, but I think the questions, we're at a point where we need to ask these questions.
How about another round of applause for